I'm doing okay.
Great.
So for some reason on my, and I cannot fix this, I've tried, my my laptop will not show everyone in the meeting in like a grid view. So I have to click on panelists to see who's here, because unless you're talking, I can't see you. So and I don't know how to fix that. I've tried and I cannot figure it out.
Yeah, I tried to do that last night and I couldn't figure it out either. So it's just like, okay, it's like.
When I hold Google Meets for my students, it's really easy. And I really can't figure out why I can't do that with this computer, but yeah.
I'll bet Mayor Rosenquist would know how to do it.
I cannot figure it out.
You give me way too much credit.
No. My child's trying to eat cookies. No.
Bring me a cookie.
Not an hour before dinner. Captain Keroy, how are you? Thought I saw you in here.
I am well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks.
Dylan gave me permission to have a cookie, so
Okay.
I just have a cookie.
Oh my God. Are we live streaming yet?
Yes, we are currently live.
We're live, so everybody can see me yelling at my child. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to call our meeting to order for Public Safety, January 19th, 2021 at 5 o'clock. I will take a roll call. Councilor Gibbs is here. Councilor Talon?
Here.
Councilor Moore?
Here.
Mayor Rosenquist?
Here.
Okay, and we have several of our department heads here. I see Councilor Kelly has joined. How are you, Councilor Kelly?
Couldn't be better.
All right, thank you for joining. So as outlined in our organizational meeting, we'll follow Robert's Rules of Orders, of course, and I asked that councilors outside of the committee have the ability to join in. And so at the bottom of our agenda, you can see new business is basically like an open discussion. So that's where I envision councilors not inside the committee would have an opportunity to ask any questions based on what we've discussed. Does that sound okay with you, Mike?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I wanted the other counselors to have the ability to interact with our public safety supervisors, because our committee, public safety is an enormous component of our budget and our city operations. So I didn't want to exclude any counselors from that interaction. So, okay, item number 1 on the agenda is approval of minutes, which we do not have. We don't have any minutes to approve today. So item 2.1 is under the mayor's discussion. 2.1 discussion, department's comprehensive COVID-19 plans. Mayor, would you like to inform us on that?
Yeah, so early this week, or maybe even later last week, it's definitely later last week, I did reach out to the department heads to ask for their individual department's plans. One thing that I noticed was everybody's plan kind of came in different formats. So what I asked of each department head was to submit their, essentially through the New York State reopening, COVID-19 reopening plan via that template, submit their department's plan and indicate any special items that or any special steps that they needed to take. So I do have all of those plans. Those are available through my office, and I think I'm waiting for one more department head to send theirs in. And then once I get that, then we'll have everybody's COVID-19 plans together, packaged in a nice and very clear, outlined, documented way. But I will say everybody already had a documented COVID-19 plan, and looking through them, that looked, that they were completely in line with both the New York State Health Department and CDC guidelines. There was nothing in there that was of concern that I read. It was just more of a matter of asking them to go back and format it in a way that was a little bit more digestible and standardized. I can keep. Yeah, go ahead.
So what are the components of this, of the COVID-19 plan? Is it the measures they're taking to, like taking temperature, social distancing? Like what exactly is in the plan?
It's social distancing, using PPE when in proximity of each other, using PPP when in proximity with the public that they are interacting with. And this is the physical book of it with everybody's printed plan in there. And then that could be, again, that can be distributed, but it's really depending on the plan themselves or the department themselves. Some departments are working in pods, for example. DPW has their departments kind of separated out into different areas. Same thing with MLD. They've got their departments kind of separated out just in case. And we, this is obviously, we're working with a lot of just in cases situations where we, if one person gets sick, they, the ideal is that sickness doesn't spread throughout the entire department, but it can be contained and maintained with just a handful of people if that were to happen. And unfortunately, we haven't had it happen. And I think that's a large part due to the safety measures that our department heads have implemented in their individual departments.
So now when I see public works employees, going by my house and their garbage trucks, I can see that they're wearing masks and things like that. In terms of the police department, and I know that Chief Lawless gave us a very thorough rundown last year about the temperatures that they take and the the frequency with which they do that. But with the police department, are they doing things like disinfecting vehicles before another shift comes on? Are they social distancing? When they're inside the building, like what are the measures they're taking to make sure that they're disinfecting and mitigating the risks that way?
Yeah, there is a process for managing any transition. Sorry, I know you hear me flipping pages in the background. There's a process of managing any transition of equipment. There's a process for proximity within the department as well. And as I mentioned, a process for interacting with the public and wearing masks, things like that. So it is fairly comprehensive. There were a couple of things that I definitely looked through in more detail in certain departments, and if a captain would like to indicate anything else then that I've missed, then I'm obviously more than happy for him to fill in any gaps.
Captain Kira, I do have a couple of extra questions. Is your I hate to call it a lobby because it's not really what it is, but the entrance area to the police department, are you how are you screening people coming in for any reason that they need to come into the police department live? What is your procedure there?
Sorry, we're trying to maintain the security of the inner building by screening folks that are actually coming in. So in order to enter the secure area of the department, people are required to be wearing masks. We do have hand washing stations at the entrances. Basic screening questions are asked. If anyone is sick or displaying any types of symptoms, we will do the interviews elsewhere. But anyone that comes into the building is screened for for any type of symptoms.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I had about the COVID-19 plan. I just want to make, there was one other question, and perhaps it's in this plan that you already submitted to the mayor. Do you have a structural plan in place because of the way that the police department operates with your shifts? Do you have a structural plan in place in the event that if any of your officers become sick and then you have a group that needs to be quarantined? What is your structural plan, if you can share that, if that happens? Like who moves up in the shift and who covers the shift and things like that? Do you have that?
Sure. So I don't have that available currently, but that's something I've been working on over the last couple of weeks. We have had members of the department who have tested positive for COVID-19, and those individuals have been taken out of work, and they've only been able to return to work once they test. They have negative tests. So we are, in theory, at this point, the contact tracing for first responders is a little bit different than it is for just members of the public. Primary contacts are not necessarily quarantined by the health department, but if we have an instance where a member comes in close contact with someone who is known to be positive or who later tests positive for COVID-19, we are taking extra precautions, maintaining mask wearing, encouraging the use of sick leave if they're symptomatic. So additional protocols that are in place, but I'm working on a more comprehensive plan for that as we speak.
Okay. When you have that, can you let us know? I would be interested to know when that is. And then when we have our next public safety meeting next month, I presume you'll have that finalized between now and next month.
Yes.
So would you have that ready to share with us on the committee by next month?
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody have questions for Captain Keroy at this time? Either Councillor Moore or Councillor Talon?
Well, I just wanted to reiterate that, that COVID is in our county now and it's very prevalent. So I guess we don't want to let our guard down now that, that is becoming more of an issue.
Councillor Talon, do you have any questions for Captain Keroy?
No questions. Just hello, Captain Keroy. Good to see you again.
Okay, seeing no questions. Item 2.2 is discussion regarding drug and alcohol testing policy. Councillor Talon, Councillor Moore, and I met prior to this meeting tonight to discuss what we would like to see on the agenda and some of the initiatives we'd like to see, some of the policies we discussed. And we decided we would like to see a universal drug and alcohol testing policy. I had a conversation with the mayor today regarding this. So Mayor Rosenquist, would you like to share with the public and with everyone here what came out of that discussion?
Yeah, so any changes to drug testing policy is a collective bargaining unit item. The current fire department, currently fire department and our electrical union does not have a randomized drug testing policy. We do have a policy in place for AFSCME, the AFSCME unit, which is there's two different policies, one for the non-DOT employees and one for the DOT employees, meaning those folks who need a particular license class to operate heavy equipment. And then we also have a testing policy, a blanket testing policy for any non-union members in the city's handbook. So that's the overarching policy or lack of policy. The concern that I would impress upon the council is that implementing a randomized drug testing policy just based on a person's job function is could be opening the city up to some legal ramifications just based on the randomization specific to a person's job function. And then any changes to a drug policy would need to be part of the negotiating, part of the bargaining unit negotiation.
Could you repeat what's the other union? The fire department union, and what is the other union? MLD. No. Okay. Any questions for Mayor Rosenquist? Either Councillor Moore or Councillor Talon?
Not at this time.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 2.3, discussions regarding creating a strategic plan for fire, police, and code enforcement. I've wanted this for a couple of years, and we haven't accomplished this. So again, Councillor Talon, Councillor Moore, and I met. This is something we discussed. I have a lot of very specific things in mind regarding a strategic plan, and the mayor and I spoke today, and he also has some thoughts about creating a strategic plan. So Mayor Rosenquist, why don't you explain what you're envisioning there?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and for anybody who knows or has worked with me, I'm a planner when it comes to organizing work and ensuring the work actually gets done. It's not just about the planning of it, it's about the execution of that plan. So when I spoke with Councillor Gibbs today, there is certainly a need to create a strategic plan per department. And then I also just impressed upon and expressed the concern, or certainly a need, to have an overarching strategic plan for the city, and each department would fill into that plan, if you will. There are certainly some caveats to that approach, which are, there may be some specific items needed, or specific items that the council or the community may want to see in combination and in partnership with the department heads to ensure that whatever plans that we're creating, it's a community, it's a collaboration, it's a consensus opportunity for us to create with the department heads who are the experts in what they're doing. So when we're looking at creating the strategic plan, it is certainly by department, and it's certainly based on the direction in which we want our city to go, but it also has to be done collaboratively with the understanding and with the expertise of our departments. Short of that, I think if we start to do things in silos, I think we lose the momentum that we could potentially be creating as a community. There are certain aspects to each individual department that I would like to see, and these are items that I've also talked to some of the department heads about. For example, when it comes to our fire department, we have a particular skill set in close confined rescue and training, which speaking with Chief Wallace, it seems like that training is underway, and that's a service that we can provide as a shared service throughout our region. And again, that goes back to a large term or long-term, large scope strategy for the city to enter into significant shared service opportunities with the skill set in the number of our departments. Other than that, in terms of any strategic plan for the police department, there is an opportunity for us to create some succession planning. I know that we're looking at hiring some lieutenants in there, and that is also part of that overarching plan to ensure that our police department is engaged in the community. We're focused on community policing, and there's an opportunity to expand our outreach from that perspective.
Any questions or discussion? Councillor Moore or Councillor Talon?
No, I didn't have anything at this time, Elizabeth, but I really am excited about perhaps developing some go forward plan for the future. I think that's a great idea.
Councillor Talon? I'm sorry?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to...
Just to put a period on that sentence, I will say that over the last 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks or so, the department heads, I do have to give props to the department heads who have come out in strong support and collaboration and partnership with the mayor's office. Every single one has been responsive. Everybody has been positive. There's been a number of issues that very difficult issues to talk about in the departments, and every single department head that I've had a conversation with has just been, there's just been an outpouring of support for the direction and for the the betterment of our community. And I just wanted to give that shout out.
Okay, moving to number 3, building inspector. Item 3.1 is a draft resolution adopting fine schedule for 2020 local law P5 alarm system permit. We do have the documentation in our email. Supervisor McMahon, would you explain what's happening with this resolution before we make a decision about whether or not to move this to our agenda for this week for council?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, the law was put forward by Councilor Barbell at the time, and the intent was to, reduce false alarms by making sure all the alarm owners, maintained their alarms properly and, paid better attention, and we had, a better avenue for addressing this. I think the question on the table is whether the registration or the permit itself should carry a fee, and the fines for false alarms is built into this, which I think is fine. But the question was asked to me if I felt like there should be a fee for the initial registration, and at this time I don't believe that's necessary. I mean, we haven't gotten it off the ground yet, but completely. But I don't see it as a huge administrative task. If it does turn into that, we could readdress it next year by, assigning a minimal fee to it. But that's, we're not looking to, get the highest possible fee for the initial registration.
What was the original proposed registration fee?
I don't think there was one. I think it left the ability to assign one if we wanted to. The fine for a false alarm is in there, but there was no fee for the registration itself.
Okay, so this will enshrine into resolution specifically, at least for now, a $0 registration fee. Right? Is that correct?
That's
okay.
Right, yes.
All right. Any discussion from Councilor Moore or Councilor Talon? Any discussion or questions?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. And, as Councilor Barbell pointed out at the time was, how much time we spend on repeat offenders of these. And I know I've had complaints from my ward about people where there's, fire alarms, and they said, now after a while, the fire department wasn't even responding to them because they had so many false alarms. We need to address that.
Okay. Councilor Talon, any questions or comments?
No, that sounds pretty straightforward.
Okay. So do we have approval to move this to our regular agenda? Councilor Talon?
Sorry, Elizabeth. Sorry, it's an all-in. Next time, just for Robert's rules on these items, the draft resolutions that come before committee should take a motion and a second before discussion, and then the discussion comes, and then it can be passed to the regular agenda with an all in favor.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
I know it's a new process. Sorry.
So what are we doing?
Just to clean it up, so just ask for a motion to move this item to the agenda, ask for a second, you completed the discussion, and then do an all in favor vote.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'd like to make that motion to bring that to the agenda.
I'll second that. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So moved. Okay, Dean, did I do that correctly? Are we all set? We're all set with that one? Okay.
Yes, I gave you a thumbs up, but yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't see anybody who isn't talking. My computer doesn't put you all in a grid, so I'm really sorry. If you have something, you're going to have to actually unmute. So thank you. Okay. Item 3.2, report for complaints or violations. Complaints or violations report December 30th, 2020 to January 19th, 2021, page 2. Everybody got that report in their packet. Does anybody have any questions for Supervisor McMahon regarding the report? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3.3, which is just a regular report from departments. As we've done in the past, I thought it would be useful if department heads had an opportunity to report out anything from their department that they wanted council to know. If there's anything they're working on, anything coming up, and so forth. So, Joe, do you have anything that you would like to report out from your department?
Well, we're a couple of weeks into the year. We're all working towards our objectives. The inspectors in the office all have their own tasks that, one's fire safety, one's housing. We've got complaints and permits that we're keeping up on. We're working on the forms for the alarm, the new alarm law, and forms for the new rental registration law. But as far as statistics go, I don't really have anything for you like that. We've had a couple of snowstorms that, our role is to send out fine notifications once we get the report from the police department. So we've dealt with 2 of those already.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Supervisor McMahon from Councilor Moore or Councilor Talon?
Well, the only thing I wanted to say, Joe, is I really appreciate those reports that we get that are attached to the agendas. When people ask me questions about what's going on with the building inspector's office, I can, quote what you sent us, what you've done over the past couple of weeks. So that's very valuable and enables us to defend that department as they're doing, being busy and maintaining the buildings and grounds.
Well, I appreciate that. And, if you need any specific information, I mean, these reports are generated from Munis, which is not really reader friendly when they come out. So if, there's something you don't understand about it and need clarification, just feel free to let us know.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Talon, any questions for Supervisor McMahon?
I think I do. So in regards to the fine notifications for snow removal, that would be if you don't have your sidewalk cleared after 24 hours after the storm ends, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so I was wondering, I've seen posts on Facebook. Somebody's always posting on Facebook about the time of the storm is over, so you have until this time to do your sidewalk, and the infirmed will not be fined. So I just wanted to clarify that means that anybody who is quarantined to their house, they won't get fined because they haven't been able to shovel their sidewalk.
Well, that's a great question. Obviously, we haven't gone through a winter of COVID before. So, I usually deal with these on a case-by-case basis as far as, so if somebody receives a notice from us and they call and want to explain the circumstances, we deal with it individually like that. I don't know that I've gotten a call that somebody said they couldn't do it because they were, COVID positive or quarantined or the like.
Well, just for example, if I were to test positive, I live on a street corner, so it would be impossible not to encounter people, if I were trying to shovel. So just I'm thinking that, well, actually Elizabeth and I talked about this, and just we didn't know if there's something that maybe we could add in based on this particular situation that many people are probably going to be facing, because a lot of people are doing the isolation right now.
I think that would, Joe, like what Joe said, that would be probably handled on a case-by-case basis. If somebody did get a fine or got a notice of a ticket, then, calling in and allowing Joe to assess the entire situation. I think that would be probably the best approach for any case, really, COVID or whatever.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 3.4, discussion, the status of the new building inspector and fee structure. This has been an outstanding item, for a while. COVID hit last year. We weren't able to fill that position and start the fee schedule. So I was hoping that we could get an update from you, Joe, in regards to, and the mayor as well. I know the mayor will be involved in this because it will require the hiring of somebody. So could you give us an update on this?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Joe, because Joe and I spoke about this, and and part of this that we need to address is the fee structure for the rental registry law. Part of the funding for this new position, which is going to primarily be helping maintain and update the status of those rental properties that have been registered, is the fee structure funds part of this position. The concern is that the fee structure may be exorbitant for some property owners in the city. Some people might be looking at upwards of $20,000+ to spend to register their property for the 3-year cycle as defined by the rental registry law. So that needs to get addressed and resolved. The other concern, which is certainly a concern of mine, is that those most impacted by that law, in my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, those folks on the Landlord Tenant committee, is that the fee structure has not been defined in that committee, and that committee does not have landlords represented to help help define that fee structure. So there's a couple concerns that do need to be addressed. I think at the end of the day, Joe needs to have an answer one way or another. If on the amount of the fee, that fee, I think we were looking at the Landlord Tenant Committee to come up with a proposal for that fee. And whatever proposal does come up, then the council will have to come to some determination on how to hire that person out of Joe's office, whether that's going to be 100% funded by the fee or 50% or 20% at the end of the day. Whatever that is, if it's less than 100% funded, then the council will have to come up, or the council, me, everybody will have to come up with a solution on how to fund that position out of Joe's office, or how to fill a gap to fund that position.
Who
Yeah,
is
Chris,
currently on?
just to answer it, excuse me, Elizabeth, I just wanted to clear that up for Chris. We
Thank
did have 2 landlords on that committee, and both of them dropped out. So we really do need to get that viewpoint back on the committee. So
Okay. So what I'll do tonight is reach out to some of the leaders of the. I'm sorry if I butchered the acronym, COPP, I think it's called. Reach out to those folks and ask if there's any representatives that they would like to add or recommend to add to that landlord tenant committee, so that there could be a fairly equal and balanced voice coming from that committee.
Jeff, who currently is on the committee?
I probably couldn't name everyone that's on there right now, but I mean, I know who they are, but I wouldn't want to just start rattling off names. I know I'll forget at least a couple of people. Maybe Mike.
So are there any landlords on there at all?
Well, there was 2, and they were very, very good representatives, but for their reasons of not being able to participate any longer, they dropped off there. And that, like I said, we lost that perspective, and we really need to get that back.
Okay.
We were well represented in the beginning.
Okay. Any other discussion regarding the status of the building inspector and the fee structure?
I will make a note that we're going to have to come up with something sooner than later if we're expecting to exercise or implement this registry law. We're going to have to come up with something sooner than later.
Well, by my recollection, and Joe and Dean, either of you can chime in. This was supposed to go into effect as of April. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
That's correct.
And we, Joe, you did have a suggested fee structure. Isn't that also correct?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so actually, the other inspector, what we needed to get this off the ground and maintain it was another position and the existing staff going to 40 hours. That was approved in the budget. So that additional regular pay was approved in the budget, but the revenue is also in the budget based on these numbers. And I was tasked with coming up with a fee schedule that made these the new position and the 40 hours budget neutral. So we worked it backwards and came up with a fee schedule of $100 a unit for a 3-year permit, which is $33 a year, which is $2.75 a month. So that's how I came to that, and it covered the expense of a new inspector and existing staff going to 40 hours, with a little bit left over for maybe a tablet and some electronic equipment. So I'm cautious to not hire this new inspector. By the way, the inspector that I have in mind works for the city already at Public Works. The superintendent of Public Works knows that he's going to take this position if it opens here. He's already been approved by Civil Service. So we got a couple of wheels in motion here about this. Public Works will have to backfill for that, and the sooner we get this moving, the better.
So, Joe, I know that you and I had this conversation last year about it. And just for counselors new to the council, this was always the plan. When this went in to the works in 2019, it was always the plan that the fee structure would pay for a new employee. When you came up with the fee structure, I know you have something in mind. Has there been any feedback about your proposed fee structure? Has that been shared with landlords at all to get any of their feedback? Do you have any kind of anecdotal information that you can share about? Do they know what you're proposing? Do we have a reaction? Has any kind of inroads been done in that regard?
I think there's some misinformation out there, maybe that it's $100 a year, or that we're gonna be on the lookout to ding them for anything that we can as far as violations go, and extra money here and there. No, I've not officially rolled this out to any sort of landlord committee group. There's been a couple of landlords that have talked to me, and I've told them about it. But yeah, no, not officially. And I don't know if Dean has any more to add to that.
Well, I could add a little bit to that. There were a couple of meetings that we had after the law was passed, and there was some pushback from the landlords. I really can't get into all the details of it because it was a legal nature. I don't know, Dean, what I can say there, but there was some pushback on that.
Yeah, I think the pushback was more along the lines that that any fee or structure can't be a revenue generator. But if it's designed to compensate an employee based on a policy initiative, then that's certainly a city discretion. But I think there's just a disfavor for any again revenue generating mechanism. But in this case, it sounds like at best it would be revenue neutral.
That's what it was always intended to be, was revenue neutral. That was always the intention, in order for the city to not that we're trying to profit from the fee structure, but we wanted to be able to hire someone and pay for that position.
And Melissa, I hate to interrupt, Councilor Gibbs. I just want to make sure I get this point across. The $100 fee for this was not just completely pulled out of the air too, just to cover this. When we looked at several different laws from different communities across the state, we tried to hone in on cities of, about our size that had college communities as well. And, just about across the board, they all have a fee structure that's similar to this. Most of them are a little more. But Oswego, Cortland, Syracuse, Rochester, Geneseo, Brockport, Burlington, Buffalo, they all have a rental registration program, and the fees are $150 a year plus certain, dollars a unit. It's broken down differently in some cases, but not many of them are less than this.
Okay. Well, I think I'd like to make a suggestion, because I do want to see this move forward, and I would like it to be implemented in a way that is collaborative, but also, Joe, I know that you've done the research because you shared it with me last year. I really would like to see us roll this out with a plan and with some feedback. Dean, what do you think? I'm envisioning maybe just a small committee meeting or some kind of collaborative meeting of some landlord. I'm just kind of talking, but
I would want to pass the baton to another committee. I think it's important to get input and receive their suggestions, but then retain the jurisdiction of this body to make a decision based on that input from Joe.
Sorry, I'm going to interject. Sorry. There's already a mechanism for soliciting that feedback. That's the Landlord Tenant Committee. There's already a need to have landlords on that committee to help formulate, based on educated decisions and research that Joe has done, to come back with a recommendation for a fee structure. There's already a mechanism for that. What's missing is having a landlord voice on that committee, which we've already indicated that would need to happen sooner than later. And I've said that I'll do that reach out today to solicit that feedback, to have that person come on. I've cautioned Joe already that I'm not going to support the approval of hiring another employee until this thing gets sorted out. And then once it does get sorted out, then we have to come up with a structured plan for filling any gaps in the funding of that department and the hiring of that new employee. But there's already a mechanism in place where, I don't foresee needing to put another mechanism in place. We just need to use the structure that we currently have in place, and we need to make it work.
Okay, so then what is going to be the pathway? You're going, Mayor, you're going to reach out to some individuals in this landlord community, and then you're going to, what's the next step? Are you going to encourage them to they can't just join a committee. They have to be approved by resolution of the council. So I'd like an actual clear plan going forward. How are we getting landlords on this committee and moving forward? So how are you envisioning the pathway of the process?
Sure. So I will reach out to the landlord group, have them make some recommendations on members who are interested in joining the group. I will coordinate that effort with the landlord tenant committee to ensure that there's whatever gaps that need to be filled, whether it be 1 landlord, 2, 3, 5, I don't know, right? So I think it's 2 at this point. Those people's names will be put up for recommendation. I'm not aware of any reason why they need to be passed by council resolution. Maybe they do. I'm not familiar with that. But at that point, they should be coming in with some semblance of understanding on, the ultimate goal of their joining this committee is to come up with a fee structure, do it with some velocity, do it fairly, in a way that's collaborative with their concerns and the concerns of the committee and the community and this council, and then make that recommendation before the 1st of April. Ideally before the 1st, and like I said, I have cautioned Joe against hiring another person until this structure is defined, and then it will be up to the council to help fill in any gaps in funding for that position if there are any gaps.
Okay. Okay. So between now and the next meeting, the next public safety meeting, it looks like we have the steps in place. And Joe, I'm hoping that by next month's meeting, we can get an update on the status of all of that. Does that sound good?
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll certainly work as diligently as possible to get an update even before then. So, you know, if needed, obviously if the appointment of members to that committee do need council resolution, that should come up before next public safety committee.
Right. So the way committees have always operated, Dean, you can tell me if I'm wrong. They come through council for approval.
Every committee is different. It's a case-by-case scenario. As we were speaking, I was trying to find the actual resolution which formed that landlord committee. I couldn't find it in this 30-second little gap. So I can get with Beth tomorrow, just see what actually we said. In this situation, I seem to recall that it was council approval, but again, that's not a one size fit all. It's every committee has its own process.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. All right. Item number 4 is the fire department. Item 4.1 is discussion for the department reports. Chief Lawless, I do have one thing that I'm hoping you can possibly give us an update on. Do you have any information about the SAFER grant application status at this point?
They're into round 2 right now. We were not selected round 1, but when you go through these grants, there's multiple layers, multiple rounds. Hopefully, you know, we'll see what we can do. I do have the assistance to firefighter grants is open, and that will close out on February 12th, and that is for equipment. So we're assessing our needs. Believe it'll be air packs to put in that.
Okay, so you've got another grant opportunity that you're going to look into. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we always apply. They're very competitive. We try to get it so that it lessens any burden on the taxpayers.
Okay. Any questions for Chief Lawless from either Councilor Moore or Councilor Talon?
Not at this time.
No questions.
Okay. Moving on to item 5, the police department, 5.1, public safety citizens review panel. Everyone got this in their packet. I'd like to call your attention to a date on here that Bonnie has referenced. She says here she's moving to the panel is moving to weekly meetings focused on presenting recommendations by mid-February to the community with a 10-day turnaround in order for us to complete our recommendations to the council no later than the first week of March. I sent Bonnie a copy of the resolution that we passed November 5th that extended their time frame to present their recommendations to the council by February 11th. And so I sent that to Bonnie as a reminder that this March due date is not going to work. They're only empowered by council resolution until February 11th. Her response was that she would bring that information back to the panel and work to readjust. And I asked her to keep me informed. So, and I explained that this, whatever recommendations they make to us, if it requires any kind of local laws or policies or procedures or anything like that, we need to have time. But that certification has to go to the Division of Budget well ahead of the April 1st deadline for sure. So I just wanted everyone to know that I did reinforce that resolution deadline so that they can act accordingly. Anybody with any questions on that or anything they would like to add?
Yeah, I did also meet with that committee regarding the work that they were doing. Part of it was to, just introduce myself and get connected to what their work is and how, if they needed any support from the city. And then the other one was just to reinforce my understanding that the work that they're doing is going to be in line with the governor's executive order, which is, I think that's obviously key for us to be able to move that forward. But other than that, I did ask them to provide this updated report that will be entered into the minutes for the regular meeting on the 21st.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion on the Public Safety Citizens Review Panel?
I was just wondering if they're back to full membership. I know we had a bunch of people leave at various times. Is that back to functional size?
Well, it's been functional size all along. I mean, when the committee was created, it was very, very large. There was a very large representation. Within the parameters of what the governor's order requested, there's representation on the committee for everything that is required by the governor's order. So there are, like Bonnie Black, Herb Carpenter, Amanda Bulris, Maxine Perry, Will Brewer, Michelle Cromwell, and I know I'm missing somebody else. Oh, and you have Hillary Rogers and Jamie Douthit. I mean, that's 8 people. That is a very large representation. So yes, we lost some members to in the committee, but they still have plenty of people that is in line with the governor's order. So we had discussed advancing more people, but it kind of got lost at the end of last year when we were working very hard to finalize the budget. But like I said, they still have 8 people on the committee. That's a lot of people, and they do satisfy the various components of the governor's order. So at this point, everything's got to be submitted to us by February 11th. That's not a lot of time. It would be pointless to put somebody, at this stage of what they've done. They're finalizing their work at this point. So, any other questions? Oh, sorry, Jeff.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so item 5.2, department reports. Captain Kira, do you have anything that you would like to share out?
Yeah, I have just some statistics for 2021 so far. In 2021, the Plattsburgh Police Department have responded to 551 calls for service. Of those, 306 were investigative cases. There have been 16 arrests made for various offenses. I have the alarm call information as well. So far in 2021, we've responded to 5 total burglar alarms. 2 of those were false alarms. 1 was a panic alarm, and 2 were founded. One of the things I wanted to just bring forward, as far as budgetary expenditures, our overtime budget, we are currently way ahead of schedule. It is January, however, and there are several factors that come into play here, but we're at 2% of the overtime budget at this point in January for a total expenditure of $3,280. We are working very hard to keep that manageable. Are there any specific questions anyone has?
No, but I think I don't. I'll turn this over to Jeff and Jennifer if they have questions. But one of the things I want to do when we wrap this committee meeting up, and I do want to make everyone aware that at 6:30, the city's live feed needs to be given up for another meeting. So we will need to wrap our meeting by 6:30. And I'm sure we will. So I'm going to work with Councilors Talon and Moore to actually, Councilor McFarland, who couldn't be here tonight, had some other ideas about reports that, like, we were getting reports, last year and the year before. I'd like to tweak what's coming out of the police department for reports. So I'd like to work with our committee members to determine what kind of information we want. But I want to say that I really appreciate your feedback on the overtime budget. It did get significantly decreased. And I appreciate that you've come up with a plan in order to keep track of that. Very briefly, though, even though this isn't on the agenda, I would like to share with everyone here an incident that unfolded in front of my house. And Captain Kiroy did email you about this, but I would like to share. This happened, I think it was last week. I was in my house. Of course, everyone knows I'm a teacher, and I'm teaching remotely. My son is learning remotely. And I was in my living room, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine who passed by my house and said, you need to lock your door. There's an incident happening outside of your door. And I said, oh. And I had observed a gentleman walking up the road, walking up the street, and he seemed agitated, and he was talking very loudly, and he was gesticulating, and which is quite honestly quite a common occurrence in front of my house. So I saw the same individual walk by, and one of your officers was walking behind him. Just following him, there was no exchanging going on, and this gentleman continued to be agitated. And it appeared to me that there was some kind of incident involving, I don't know if it was a spouse or a partner, but a woman and it appeared a young teenage child. But anyway, I watched the whole thing happen live, where there were two officers on the scene, and they were handling the incident. And I was so impressed with them because there were several moments when I thought the agitated gentleman was going to possibly assault one of the officers. I mean, there was a lot of physical aggression on his part. Your officers never flinched. There was never any heightened, you can tell even from a distance when there's body language that suggests that the situation is just amplifying. Nothing like that happened, and I was concerned. It was concluded after probably about a half an hour interaction from what I could see, peacefully. And the gentleman was then picked up by an ambulance, and the officers left. And I just wanted to share that with you because, quite honestly, incidents like that are pretty common from my front window. But to see your officers in action and handle everything with absolute dignity and grace, and I just want to say how much I appreciate that. But one thing I wasn't sure of, and was hoping that you could maybe share, we get to see what happens then, in the incident, but following that, do you have any idea how much extra time after that is dedicated to an incident like that? I know there must be, if the ambulance showed up, there must be some hospital follow-up there. Of course, there's paperwork and so on. What kind of time is dedicated to completing something like that?
Well, it really depends on the nature of the call initially. If it were a domestic incident involved, that fits the definition. There's additional paperwork there, and like you mentioned, anytime someone's brought to the hospital or directed to go to the hospital by a member of law enforcement, there's additional paperwork. But the easy answer is it really depends. But by no means is the incident over with just because the officers get in the car and drive away. We have a very detailed and in-depth reporting policy. Our paperwork is completed in a timely manner, and to be able to provide it to somebody who has no knowledge of the incident and be able to get a clear picture of what took place. So the reporting is significant. The paperwork that may be required by the hospital or by an outside agency. And if there is an arrest that takes place, there's a significant amount of court paperwork for the district attorney's office, for the defense attorney. So to answer your question, quite a bit goes into to what takes place after the incident.
Oh, you're muted, Elizabeth.
I just want to thank you. Thank you, John. Does anyone have anything else for Captain Kiroy under department reports open for discussion?
Well, I'd just like to say I would really like to see the police blotter report restored to the city website. I know we had it for many years. And a local radio station seems to get all that information with no problem. I don't see why we couldn't, start that back up. It was really very informative, and it didn't look like a major report. It just had the arrests for the week, and it was a weekly report.
I'll look into that. I do know that the press or the radio stations get a manual report. So once a week, the shift supervisor will compile that report and then send it out. But I will certainly look into that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Captain Kiroy? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to new business, which is 6.1, other counselor discussions. I asked that we have this component on our committee so that other counselors would have an opportunity, if they wished, to engage in discussion with our department heads. I had two things more that I wanted to ask about before I turn the floor over to other counselors if they wish. One of them is I had a phone call. So Joe, this one is for you. I got a constituent phone call regarding her home adjacent to a large rental property that is currently in the midst of taking down a significant amount of hedge that was separating the rental property. And so it's a multi unit apartment complex. And there was a hedge separating that property from this residence, and it's being taken down. And there is large work trucks that are parked there in the parking lot. And now there's absolutely no privacy between this rental unit and the residence. And so her question was, number one, is it a violation of city code for work trucks to be parked in a rental parking lot in a residential area? And the other one is there anything in the city code or zoning code that mandates there must be some kind of privacy fencing between these large units and a residential property? So I was hoping you'd be able to answer those.
This is the first time I've heard of it, so I don't have any detailed information on it. But work trucks, there's precedent that's gone through the zoning ordinance that if you have a vehicle that you take to work and back every day, and it's a work vehicle, whether it's from the cable company or Bob's Plumbing or whatever, that's your work vehicle, and there's no real issue with that. I don't know that that's what we have going on there, but I could take a look at it, and I'd be happy to do that. I hope that answers that question. I don't know that it does.
I can send you the location. I can email you with the location so it's not public here. Okay.
And with request to the hedge, hedges are unregulated for the most part in the city. So unlike a fence, there are very strict guidelines about a fence where they can be, how high they can be, especially. Hedges are not regulated in that way. So if somebody takes down a hedge or installs a hedge, it doesn't really have to come through my office as far as permitting goes. But there may have been a requirement for that based on screening. There's a screening requirement in our ordinance, with respect to parking lots, not necessarily just apartment buildings. So it would have to be specifically related to the parking lot. So I could look into that as well. They would not have to necessarily replace the hedge. If it is in fact part of their screening requirement, they could achieve that with a fence or some other structure that took care of that.
Okay, so what I'll do is send you the location and would you like me to give you the name and number of the person who contacted me? Do you want to operate it that way so you can contact that person, or do you want to look into it, get back to me, and I contact her, whichever you're comfortable with?
I'm comfortable with either. It's always best that whoever has the issue contacts us direct, just because it works faster that way. But not knowing if that's how they want to do it, I'll leave that up to you. If you want to send me their information directly, I have no problem dealing with them.
All right, I will follow up tomorrow, and I'll be in touch about
Sounds
that.
good.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
And I had just one final question, which is not public safety related specifically. This, I guess, would be directed more towards the mayor. I've come into a grant opportunity for the city, and it's a company that, so I got this information. It's a company that is in charge of actively seeking, like we pay a fee, and they actively seek out grants on behalf of the municipality. Mayor, do we have a dedicated grant writer in the city, or not? I guess the question.
No, we don't. No, we don't. And I think that's part of the, that, again, going back to that overarching strategy, strategic plan for the cities, to identify a potential resource either hired or contracted that can actively and aggressively pursue grant opportunities that are applicable to the community, to our community, and to our city. The question underlying that is funding for that, whether that position is funded through administration fees, or if it's funded at the general fund and then reimbursed through admin fees. I'm open to either. I spent the last 5 years championing economic development at the county level, and one thing that has become prevalent is that if you don't have a seat at the table, you don't get fed. If we don't have somebody, actively advocating for grants and actively seeking grants to come into our community, then we don't get them. That's just the reality of it. And, as much as I adore our department heads and appreciate their go get them attitude, they're not grant writers. So to look at our department heads and say, well, why don't you go get these 5 grants? Well, they've also got to run a department and focus on the concerns of their department and write grants on top of that. The community development office really is the only department right now that actively seeks to obtain grants for development opportunities in our community. I would wholeheartedly and appreciate an opportunity to fund another position into that department, and would do that tomorrow if it's the will of this body.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else, either Councilor Kelly, or any other councilors? I saw Councilor Canales was here and now he's not. Any other items for discussion?
I'll say a couple words about the Tenant Landlord Committee that weren't mentioned, if you don't mind, Elizabeth.
Sure.
There's some other things that we've at least talked about in that committee, and I promised the members I would relay this to the council. So this is probably as good a place as any to do it. But besides the rental registry, we've talked a lot about garbage. We feel that labeling cans and screening to conceal cans and dumpsters, and perhaps even garbage rooms, are a possible solution for garbage problems in larger buildings. And the thing about this is we don't really know the city code that well to be able to say whether or not those items may already be in the code, such as labeling cans with the owner's name and address, and screening to conceal cans and dumpsters. We mentioned the 2 members that we would like to have. We talk a lot about vacancy rates and what a hardship that is for tenants. The vacancy rate in Plattsburgh for apartments is about 2%, which means that they're essentially non-existent. And the people who, are looking to move have a really, really difficult time, which leads into the next item, which is that tenants are afraid to report violations because they could get kicked out on the street. And there have been several tales we've been told about tenant harassment. We've talked about beautification and downtown cleaning, and then a moratorium on evictions. We'd like to know more about how that works, when it expires, and what we can do as a board to help tenants work their way through that process. And then finally, in our last meeting, snow removal came up, as it always does every year. There were discussions about parking, ice buildup, and using the flashing lights more creatively. Councilor Moore may have some additional information to add.
Mike, how long has this tenant landlord committee been in operation?
Well, that's a real good question, Elizabeth. It started, I believe, in February of last year, maybe a week or two before the big COVID shutdown. And we just ceased operations after the first meeting, I think it was. And we didn't get back together until September 30th. So we are now meeting every other week on Wednesday. It's a public meeting. So, everyone.
That's actually a really good point, Councilor Gibbs. As this was raised earlier, Beth and I were circulating the resolution which formed it, and it did confirm that the council does appoint the members. But one part that did strike me was there was a 3-month term to that committee, which, by its own term would have expired in May. So I would suggest, if there's still the desire to keep this committee alive, we need to extend the date for its operations and then also fill the rosters with landlords or whoever, any other vacancies. Or it's disbanded. Yeah, I was kind of reading that as we were speaking, and that was a good opportunity to bring that up.
Okay, so would we need to have that rectified this week?
As soon as possible.
I would recommend, after we get off this call, I will work with Dean to get a resolution to reinstate the landlord tenant committee, and quickly poll members of that committee who would like to be reinstated, as well as get 2 new landlord representatives on that committee as well. But at the very least, reinstate the committee by resolution, appoint initial members, and then look to appoint additional members in the very, very near future. If we can't get people, or if we can't identify new members to fill out that committee by tomorrow or Thursday. One thing I want to avoid trying to do is add something under Rule 4 unless absolutely necessary. And I don't know, right? I don't know about adding something right at the last minute, but something like this, I mean, it could possibly go under Rule 4, but I'm going to try. I think we'll put every effort into getting this item onto the agenda and then starting to fill members back into it.
Okay. All right. Any other items for discussion? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so moved. Meeting adjourned, 6:13 p.m. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.